Hello, everybody, and welcome to Lads, It's Tottenham, inspired by the Alex Ferguson quote and not some sort of slur on females. Just thought I'd clarify that. Hello, females. We see you in the chat. Kerry, welcome back. P Day Yay. Hello, good evening, and we're here to talk about Spurs. There is a game going on, obviously, tonight. We'll keep you informed of the score. I've got it on the big screen in the man cave. Adama Traore wrecking havoc on the United defence, which is beautiful to see. Hopefully, he has some kind of end product this season, or at least in that game. Jack, welcome back to the show. Lovely to see your American face.
It's lovely to see you guys as well. It's been a long time, and I'm really looking forward to talking about Tottenham tonight. It's a fun, exciting time at the beginning of the season where hope springs eternal, and then it gets dashed before too long. It's a wonderful time. Wonderful time.
And here to correct me on my pronunciation of our new signing, HG, welcome back. And you too have been in America lots lately.
Yes, yeah. Seeing my wife's family out there, so just enjoying, relaxing. The sun break is still going. But yeah, I'll be honest, I woke up this morning and was relatively underwhelmed at the fact that the season was starting. And one signing later, I'm like, when is it Monday? I want to go to Monday right now, please.
I know. And of course, I will be there live and direct in the King Power Stadium. My last visit there ended very happily, of course. A beautiful 3-2 win with Stephen Bergwijn.
No, I thought you were talking about missing the traffic.
Last minute goals. I did miss the traffic last night. I'll be staying till the bitter end this time. You can understand that, I'm sure. Let us know where you're from in the chat. Do comment. It's an interactive show, so we will get to your comments. We have a full agenda planned for you this evening. But do let us know where you're watching from and what your predictions are for the weekend as we go through the show. Should just mention, we're new on the socials. Obviously, it's a slight rebrand of the old channel. Lads, It's Tottenham is on X or Twitter before Musk destroyed it, and we are on there, so please do head on over there and give us a follow. But onwards, and we have signed a new player. Now this one caught me completely off guard. I saw it posted in the chat that this was imminent, but it was from some random account that I'd never heard of, if I'm honest, so I didn't pay much credence to it. 2 minutes later, I got a notification from Spurs. Pretty much how it ended up for you, HG.
Yeah, no, that's exactly how it ended up for everyone. I don't think anyone saw this coming. We kind of this random link saying it was almost done, and 10 minutes later, both Burnley and Spurs had announced it. So I think, I'm excited. I think he's a pretty good player, and it's the type of player that we needed. We're desperate for some trickery, desperate for something different. It was very, very normal and kind of formulaic going forward, and Odobert provides a bit of ingenuity and a bit of guile and something that's unpredictable, which is what Spurs' attack desperately needed.
Yeah, well, we're going to come on to your knowledge of him, HG, after I've just clarified that Jack knows absolutely nothing about Odobert. Jack, is that fair to say? Were you caught out by this one, surprised? Had you heard of him?
I was loosely familiar because I haven't gone back and checked this because I just got off work. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, he might have had the assist that got Burnley's first goal in the Burnley-Tottenham game when they were first back up. But I'm not sure about that. I haven't gone back to check that. I've seen a little bit of him, didn't know. And yes, it caught everyone by off guard. I mean, you got to give credit. Even if you don't like the signing, you have to be somewhat impressed with the fact that there were no rumors, no links, no in the know, nothing. And we just woke up to Burnley and the Tottenham announcing a signing. So, I mean, I think being able to keep that quiet is pretty good. And I don't know what the reason was. Maybe they thought company would want to sign him potentially if they knew he was available. I doubt it, but you never know. But they did pull off something, and it's not usually we get surprised like this. So it's always nice.
And what do you know about him?
Only what I've been reading from other people who follow the championship a lot more closely than I am, and looking at some stats. I mean, the things that jump out to me at is that he was the second fastest player under 21 in the Premier League last year. And the other thing is he had, of the people under 20 in the top 5 leagues of Europe last season, he had the 4th most dribbles completed at 53, which I don't know. I haven't had time to figure this out, but I would not be surprised if all the other forwards at Tottenham combined had 53 completed dribbles last season.
Well, this might be the case, but we do have Super Timo Werner back on loan. HG, all right, I'm going to phrase it as kindly as I possibly can. A lot of people, myself maybe included, are going, we went for Neto, we wanted him. Nico Williams, maybe, someone like that. And we ended up with this guy with a French name that I can't pronounce properly, who I've never heard of. Tell me I am ignorant and a bit of an idiot, and he's going to set the world on fire. And actually, as Kerry says, is this one for now, do you think? Tell us all you know about this man.
Well, I mean, going on what you said, I think it's true. I don't think he was our first choice. I mean, if he had been, we probably could have got him back in June. However, that doesn't mean I think it's a bad signing. This idea that we want to go and get our first choices. Well, yeah, I'd love to sign Messi. I'd love to sign De Bruyne. That might be my first choice. Neto, obviously, for various reasons, went to Chelsea. We didn't think he was worth the money. And we've spent all summer discussing whether we thought Neto might not be worth that, but the money that Wolves wanted because of his injury record. We talked about Easy and the fact that, he might want to leave Palace, but it's a lot of money up front and maybe Spurs don't want to pay it. We've had Diver talk about how Spurs don't have that kind of cash to just throw around willy-nilly. Whether that's true or not, that's what he would believe. And so, we're left with maybe he is our third or fourth choice to be that kind of dribbly winger that we wanted. However, that doesn't make him bad. And I've been surprised to see the amount of Spurs fans go, "Who is this guy?" He played
Danny Rose him.
Well, he played against us in May. I think the problem with Burnley last season is that we played them right at the start of the season, where we thrashed them. And the only guy that looked any good on that day was the other dribbly winger that they've got, the American kid called Koleosho. That's kind of, I say American, I think he might play for Italy, but he was born in America. And so we all thought, oh, he's good. And he started the season really well. And then for 6 months, we didn't give a crap about Burnley. And we just saw them lose game after game after game. Despite being this attacking team, they would get beat most weeks. And then by the time we played them again at the end of the season, they were already relegated. And so it was kind of a free hit for them. And so, I think he played well in that game against Spurs, that Spurs went on to win. But still, it's kind of Burnley were kind of off our radar for so much of last season that if you weren't watching them on Match of the Day, and you probably weren't watching them when they got their odd Sky game, we didn't really know if any of their players were individually good. And I just think that going back over last season, and Odobert did come from nowhere. No one saw it coming, but I do think he's the kind of player that we need. And yes, he's young, and yes, he's not as experienced as Neto or Eze or any of the more established players that we may have wanted. But had you said to me, and I really do mean this, had you said to me a week ago, we could spend 25 million on Odobert or 60 million on Eze, I would be picking Odobert because he's 7 years younger and there's a chance that he could turn into something really, really good. And Eze, as great as he is, we sat here thinking, well, if he came, then would that push Maddison out the team? I think it's clear that they're slightly different players and we really do need someone like Odobert around.
Interesting. So to answer Kerry's question, you think he's for now, HG? You think he'll get game time?
Well, I mean, okay, hang on. Do I think he should get game time? Yes. Do I think he's better than Werner and Johnson? Yes, I do. And everyone knows how I feel about Johnson. I don't want to rehash it.
No, I don't know, HG. Do you
no, I know. I just if Sonny's now playing left wing, which I think he is, then it's probably Johnson's position to lose down the right. And so I suspect Johnson will start the season. But in the same way that Bergvall will be on the bench probably, and I think he'll come through and make a starting position his own, I suspect the same is true of Odobert. I'm being hopeful because I do think we need desperately a right winger, and I don't necessarily want to see Kulusevski go out there, but I think personally he has more to offer than Johnson does.
Kerry says Johnson's
time.
Yeah,
Johnson's time is coming, but not at Spurs. He'll be very good. Johnson is a decent player for a counter-attacking team. That's not who we are. That's not who we want to be. So I just don't see it happening at Spurs for him. I think Odobert is better on the ball. I think he's certainly more two-footed than Johnson is, and that's kind of the competition he has right now.
I think Kerry's trolling you, as the kids say, HG. Long works in the shadows. Wow. It was really out the blue, wasn't it, Jack? I mean, it was all the players we've been linked with all summer, and then this guy came literally from nowhere, didn't he? Long working wonders in the window. We'll come on to all the transfers in a minute, but
I mean, wonders is a matter of a subjective opinion, clearly. But the fact that there were no leaks from either side, agent leaks, anything along those lines, I find amazing in today's world. This is almost a flashback to the way transfer windows worked 10, 15, 20 years ago, where you read about it after the fact. That doesn't happen much anymore. And obviously, being such a young player without a great following, there's a lot less interest. The fan base wasn't screaming for this guy. There weren't journalists trying to, well, who can I link Tottenham with? You don't get a lot of clicks if you talk about Wilson Odobert, right? So there's probably less incentive to create the links. But the fact that no one knew and you could wake up, for me, I mean, it was literally waking up, clicking on my phone, and basically within 10 minutes, the news breaks and it's all there. So I find that astonishing in today's world, because how many people knew about this transfer? The fact that he was already at Tottenham doing a medical, just the chance that somebody sees him is just, the fact that it didn't get out ahead of time is just really amazing to me. And it tells you that, the club is trying to operate. I mean, that's really been even the Solanke leaks were there all summer, but when it actually heated up and people were saying, hey, this is going on, it got completed really, really quickly. I mean, he was linked from the beginning of the window, but in terms of when the talk started to completion, they moved very swiftly. And that was the case with the Werner re-signing, regardless of whether or not that's a good idea. It was the same thing with Yang. It was the same thing with Gray. These things moved very quickly and didn't have there was no drawn out saga. There were no hijacking attempts. Maybe you could argue we're signing people that other people don't want to hijack. That's fine if that's your opinion. But I'm impressed with just how quietly they're operating in this window.
Interesting. Alana's saying you used to be fat. Can you?
Yeah, the hair added at least 20 pounds. I've just spent 5 weeks in America. There is no way I'm slimmer than I was before.
Including your first Buffalo Wild Wings experience.
Oh my gosh, salty hell. Anyway, thank you, Elena. I don't know if you remember me to be this really fat man, but I'm still fat. Just maybe I don't look it today. Thank you. I think I'm sweating it off in this 30-odd degree heat in Vienna. I've just spent 5 weeks in 30-odd degrees with air conditioning.
Yeah.
And so this feels like, oh, okay, this is normal. Great.
There's a lot of people saying things like this. We need some quality in our team to win trophies now. Any comment on that, guys, HG?
Well, as I said before, I think he's better than certainly two of the wingers we've had before. So, to me, he's fighting John. I mean, I expect Ange to start Johnson, but I think he's better than Johnson. And so, do I think he's the finished product? No. Do I think he's better than what we have? Yes. And so we hope the team grow together. Like we saw this, we're all dreaming that it's going to be like Poch, right? Where the first season we're figuring out what's what, and then the second season we have a really good go, and then the third season we're frankly should have been champions, we're best team in the league. We're hoping that the team can grow together, and maybe it will take a bit longer because we're still signing people, whereas Poch was quite lucky to have a number of players already around.
Yeah,
but
peak Harry Kane being a gift from a goal from Tim Sherwood actually.
Exactly.
He'll take full credit for that. This is a fair point, Archie and Odobert for nearly Eze Do. So it's a fair.
I mean,
point.
We haven't done a show all summer. Archie Gray, I think is probably a very, very good player, but it's not what Spurs needed. No one thought we needed another midfielder hybrid who's played at centre back for most of pre-season. We don't really know what his best position is. With Odobert, we do know the type of player that he is, and we do know that the squad lacked it. So I'm much more excited about that. The Archie Gray signing, to me, feels like one where that's a lot of money for someone who we don't know how much he's really going to play, or we don't really know where he's going to play. That was more of a head scratcher. But this
what I would say on that is, and I said this on the Cheese Room podcast the other day, it's exciting. It's exciting to have some young talent. I mean, admittedly, that we've mostly bought in, but we've actually got young players now that are coming into the fray, aren't they? Whether we've bought them or not, you've got your Bergvall, Archie Gray, Mikey Moore. We've got some top young talent. Feels like a long time since that's been the case, Jack.
Yeah, because we went through two managers who if you were under 21, they wanted no part of you, pretty much, right? So, they only wanted established, experienced pros, and Tottenham, for a variety of reasons, had trouble getting those players in for those managers, right? So I think it's only logical that, given the change of management to Ange, who clearly likes working with young players, wants to develop players, wants to work with youth, that you would back him with young players if you think he's going to be around a while. I know there are plenty of people who don't think he's going to make it to Christmas or to the end of the season, but the fact is that this is putting together a group of players that has significant potential. And it's not just potential that, I think they're going to be good. You saw some evidence in preseason against professional players, maybe not Premier League level at every time, but I thought some of the guys did well in the Bayern series. Quite frankly, I think Bergvall is probably potentially going to be starting for Madison, or maybe Sarr very soon. Archie Gray is a bit of a mystery in the sense that I think he's a fantastic player too. I agree that he was probably not going to be signed if Brentford didn't move for him, and they had him on their list and really didn't want to lose out to him, and so they gave him a better offer. And the fact that he's versatile actually does help, because we do need a backup at right back, and I thought he was. Again, it's a short sample, but I thought he was fantastic against Bayern Munich. And I saw our senior
point as well, isn't it? Gray can play. He played filled in at right back, centre back. DM obviously is his main position. So he does bring options for cover.
Yeah, and this idea that we only have players that are going to help us win the league in the 27-28 season, I don't buy that, because look around. Players that are 18, 19, 20, 21 years old can make significant impacts if they're good enough. It's the old adage, if you're good enough, you're old enough. And his profile is, like HG says, is something we just don't have. He wants to take people on. He has a variety of ways that he can take you on. He uses both feet. His finishing probably needs a lot of work. But as I said before in the green room here, is that I take his finishing potentially over Werner at this point. So in my mind, it's an upgrade. He's not Nico Williams. He's not the finished product. But guess where Nico Williams is playing? He's not coming to the Premier League, right? So, I mean, and those players, we have trouble signing those players, because people who are good enough to win the Premier League, go on teams that can win the Premier League, have choices that don't include Spurs.
Yeah.
It is the reality. Until we actually win things consistently, we are going to always struggle to buy those players. And a lot of them will only come if we overpay.
Show them the money.
Yeah, and Ange is clearly not interested in paying someone $250,000 a week who says, "Yeah, I'll come to you if you pay me $250. Otherwise, I'm going to City for $200 or whatever." I mean, I don't think he wants those players, like it or not. That's who we have as a manager. So I think we need to get on board. And I think I'm much more optimistic about the season, and I'd be thrilled if we brought in a legit defensive midfielder, since clearly I think that position has some major question marks.
Yes, we're going to talk about.
This is it. We're kind of stuck in the catch-22 of like, we want a squad of good young players. Clearly, we do, right? And I think that we're setting ourselves up for the future, but we have a bunch of players, at least one I can think of, who they're not thinking about the future, or if they are, they're thinking about a future that's away from Tottenham, right? And so it's weird. Like I'm talking about Romero here, but like Romero is a quality player that is probably right now better than the fifth best team in England, right? He's too good for Spurs. And so if you want to keep him around and you want to surround him with players who are maybe better than the 18-year-old hopefuls that we've done, or 19 in Odobert's case. So I get for Spurs, we're thinking, great, we're building something with young players, but at some point you have to satisfy the team. And like, I don't want to sit here in May going, Spurs have done really well because we've managed to finish 5th again, but we've got a younger team, so that's somehow a better finish. I don't want that. I want us to be better than 5th, and it is questionable that whether we're going to do it. I'm excited by the signings, and I think that Gray is a very good player, but again, I'm thinking, is he going to improve the first team? Is that really what we want to be doing? Are we trying to lower the floor instead of higher the ceiling? I mean, not lower. We're trying to higher the floor instead of higher the ceiling. You kind of need to think about the ceiling, and I'm not sure Spurs have too much. That doesn't mean I think the players are good, because I do think they're good.
Yeah, but I agree. This comments come in the chat here. What Davo's saying is Arsenal was able to sign Rice when they weren't in the Champions League or whatever he's saying, or sign these players. Arsenal has a very rich history of winning things, and recently. I mean, in Arteta's first year, they did win the FA Cup, probably saved his job, right? But it took them several years to build a group of players to challenge, right? And so Arsenal has that reputation. Spurs do not. And so it's harder for us to sign than Arsenal or Liverpool. I mean, all the good work that West Ham has done this window and all the good work that Aston Villa has done this window are still not players. How many of those players would you put into our first 11 that they've signed? And Villa lost Diaby and Lloris. I mean, those are two really good players that are out of their squad. Teams like us and Aston Villa are going to have trouble getting those top tier talents to instantly challenge. So you're going to have to build a squad. Now, whether we're buying the right players, we'll know in time. But I mean, this comment, there's another comment that, I think I see all the time. Stadium's supposed to be a game changer. Arch and Dom ain't game changers. First of all, I don't know about Arch. We'll get to Dom later. He is for Spurs. I 100% believe he is.
We can move to him now.
And here's the thing: we've put out 150 million gross spend this summer, right? That is more than I think every other club in in the world at this point. Now, it's not a huge sum, but I mean, if you look at the amount of money the club has spent since the stadium is built, it is in the top 4 of the Premier League. It's just we buy poorly too often. Maybe over the last 2 or 3 windows, the miss rate is getting lower. We're obviously stretching a little bit with some of the players. We don't know how Bergvall is going to really perform. We don't know how Gray is going to perform. We don't know how Odobert is going to perform. We don't, Yang is.
We don't know how Solanke is going to perform yet.
Yeah, I do believe. Well, I don't know. I believe firmly that he is exactly the profile of player that we need to not only score more but prevent goals. But that's just my opinion.
I think I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of the ownership, etc. But I understand the frustration in the fan base, and I hear what you're saying, because the frustration is we don't go that extra mile. We have gone the extra mile for this guy though. 65 million quid. It's a lot of cash.
Record signing.
80 million euros or whatever. Record signing for a player who's got a very average record in the Premier League. Good season last year. Can't take that away from him. Didn't make it at Liverpool. Didn't make it at Chelsea. Matured a bit at Bournemouth. 19 goals last season. HG, do you think this man is... Am I right to put him in my EPL team? Because I have put him in there. So I see in Angie's system him scoring goals. What do you think?
Like if we play the football that Bournemouth played last season, and Bournemouth were very much a high press on the front foot, trying to disrupt their opponents, which Ange has often said that's who we are. Like, I don't remember seeing it too often last season. I feel like second half of last season, we were very... our heart wasn't in it. We would do it every now and again, but it wasn't like a full-on team philosophy. It didn't feel that way. If we can play that way, then he is obviously the type of player that will hurt teams. He will make it difficult for our opponents. We were going to be that kind of, like, the biggest pest. Do you know what I mean? Like, we're a massive club that's going to play a kind of underdog style to try and disrupt things. And I think that works for Spurs. I think it works better than this idea that we are suddenly one of the big 6 now and teams will treat us differently. They don't. They attack Spurs, they press Spurs, and they usually do well against it when they're doing that. So, like, I don't think any of us thought in May we're going to go and spend 130 million on Solanke, Archie Gray, and Wilson Odobert. Right, that is a lot of money for players that are slightly proven / unproven, right? However, what Jack talked about earlier, that's kind of the situation Spurs are in. We are not in it for the players that we would like to be in for, right? Those players won't pick Spurs. If they have a chance to go somewhere else, they will go somewhere else. It sucks because the stadium is there, everything else is there, the ticket prices are ridiculously high, and there's no need for that. So everything is set up to say we can, and let's face it, we have the money to do so, but people aren't interested. People aren't interested. It's like saying I've got this really fancy house in Baghdad. No one's interested. Right?
I don't know if N17 is Baghdad.
No, it's not. But the idea, like in football terms, for a top player, like it sounds awful. Like you would rather go to Chelsea because Chelsea will give you over $100,000 a week guaranteed for the next 9 years. Right?
Yeah.
Spurs won't do that. Spurs don't do that. We might do it in increments once you've come in and shown you're worth it, but we're not just going to hand it out like we did to Ndombele. That's the thing. Mm-hmm. So if you're looking at playing time, yeah, Spurs can probably give you that. If you're looking at European football, Spurs can give you that. If you're looking to commit 5 years and earn 40, 50 grand, 60 grand a week, yeah, we'll do that. But if there are teams that will give you 5 years at double that money, you're going to go there. You just will. So Spurs, the stadium means that Spurs have more money to spend on players that the big five don't want. That's who we are.
Mm-hmm. And this whole thing about Tony, I'm sorry, if the manager wanted Tony, we'd have Tony. Sorry, we would. Clearly, I think that the rumors are, I don't know if it's true, is that he wasn't enamored of the person. Not the player, I think, might fit fine. But I think Dominic Solanke is a better fit than Ivan Toney. Eze is a totally different story. I mean, everyone in this show probably would love to have Eze in the team because you can play him in different positions. But again, you were going to have to probably put up $50 million up front and a total package of 80 to 90 to get him out of Crystal Palace, maybe. And maybe he doesn't want to leave Crystal Palace. I mean, all these things that we say is, we should get this player, we should get that player. Well, they need, the club has to sell, and the player wants to have to come, and we have to be willing to commit the money. All those things have to come together, and I'm not sure that it's realistic. But Ivan Toney, I don't think, is a better player than Dominic Solanke for this team. He holds the ball. Solanke will hold the ball up. We had so many goals given by us not being able to hold the ball up. We don't have an out ball too often. It was pretty much Kulu only who could drag us up the field. No one else had that ability. Solanke has the potential to do that. He holds it up better. He's better in the link-up play. He's better in the air. He's another head in the box for defending, since our set piece defense is crap, right? Yeah. So there's so many areas that he makes us better at. Potentially, he hasn't played for us, potentially better. I'm actually thinking that by the end of the season, I would not be shocked if Solanke displaces both Watkins and Toney in the England setup, because I think he can get 20 plus if he stays healthy, which he has. Under Bournemouth, when they weren't playing with the current manager, right? When they had O'Neill and
Parker, thank you.
How did I forget Scott Parker? They didn't play a system that enhanced his ability. He was usually alone and isolated up top in a team sitting deep. Once they played an expansive setup where he could play with Kluivert on the right, and they had a great two-man game going, they did great things, and he was the best presser of anyone in the Premier League last season. So he fits everything we want to do. And 65 million sounds like a lot, but guess what? I mean, what are strikers going for? How many of number nines, legit number nines, were even available to anyone, not named Mbappe, to anyone in the league? How many have moved? How many has Arsenal fixed their striker problem? No. It's not easy to find those guys.
I mean, I would still think that Arsenal will buy Ivan Toney. I do think that's what we want. I mean, the rumours are that Ivan Toney wants 260 grand a week, and that's the reason we didn't sign him, not because we didn't want him, Jack. So I think it's more around the payroll side of things. You can get 250 grand a week or whatever. Bargain if he bangs them in. This is our business so far. Solanke for 64 million, 65 million. Archie Gray, 41. Odobert, 29. Luke Bergvall, 10 million. And Yang, who no one's remembered about. I think he's still on loan there till January, for 4 million. So when you look at it, we've forked out 130, 140 million. It's a good outlay, isn't it? Caller, get behind the team. I'm not quite sure what you mean. I am behind the team. It's a good outlay. And going the other way, so Royale, 15 million euros, Joe Roden, 11, and then lots of free transfers and loans in a nutshell. But I think what you can say we have done this season is shift a lot of deadwood off the payroll, which has got to be good for moving forward, hopefully, Jack, because just been so many players in the squad who just haven't featured. They're literally no use. Your Sessignons, your Brian Hills, and I love Brian Hill, Joe Rodens, etc. And we've done a lot of loaning, but just a complete waste of time. Most of these guys having them around, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say that's an underrated part of the window is how many people they successfully shifted off, regardless of the method, whether they terminated the contract, whether they sold them outright or loaned them. Actually, fans don't care about outgoings. That's a club and financing issue. I understand that, but it's still, and we never got to the absurdity that Chelsea is in. But the reality is that we got a lot of players out. The frustrating thing is how many clear outs. I've only been a supporter for about a dozen years. How many clear outs have I had to see go? It's because our buying has been so poor. And you can't rate a window at this point either, because, I can remember people thinking that we'd hit the ball out of the park with the Tanguy window, right? And that window turned out to be utter shite. So as a result, I think that you should be at least tapping the brakes on what your opinion of the window is. I think potentially this window has proved to be exceptionally good, but we won't know probably until maybe even the 26-27 season.
That's a big claim, Jack. That's a big claim.
I said it potentially. What if Odobert and or Archie Gray or Yang turns out to be a $50 to $100 million player? Right?
What if one day I get to...
Right. I know. What I'm saying is that we thought we had great windows in the past, and they turned out to be pretty poor.
Yeah.
So we're assuming that because Solanke has only had one great season in the Premier League, that he is by definition a one-season wonder. Maybe he is. I don't think so, but maybe he is. We won't know until at the end of the season or even next season before we really know how good these players are.
It's good to see that Dave's got a new shtick for 2024. It's quite funny though. Yeah. Let's talk about Leicester.
I think if Dave added the word bad to both of those clauses, it would work. Chelsea sell hotels to buy bad players, and Spurs fund hotels by not buying bad players. There you go. Then it would work better. No one's sitting here wishing we were Chelsea, right? Unless you're Dave. Dave might wish that Spurs were Chelsea.
Nah.
But we certainly don't.
Yeah, no, not at all. Leicester Tottenham, a fixture that I always look forward to. It always does seem to be a good game against Leicester. I'll say that. High scoring. I remember going to Wembley and we won 5-4. I think that was the day Lamella came off the bench and was on fire. HG
end of season holiday game. He was always
it was fun though. It was a fun day out. I think that was the day I met Gaza, so sticks in the memory. I saw him. We beat him in the FA Cup at the King Power. I didn't leave early for that one, and then obviously through the famous 3-2. And then I think we thrashed them. Wasn't it 7-something season before that?
6-2 on the Sun hat track off the bench.
Yeah. Kane scored 3 goals. It's a very different Leicester these days, though. Jack, whilst I get a beer actually, because I am now officially empty. It wouldn't be a caller show without going to get a beer mid-show. Do you two want to ping back your thoughts on what you think of Leicester? Shit. What do we think of shit? Leicester.
Leicester is in trouble. I think they haven't been able to strengthen because they're probably facing a point deduction very soon. They don't have a lot of options off their bench at this point. I think, unfortunately, they've lost their manager that brought them up. it hurts because one of my good friends is a Leicester fan, and we communicate, weekly during the season. And I feel for him because I think he knows they're probably slated to go right back down. I hope they don't. Quite frankly, I have nothing really against Leicester per se, but no, they're in trouble. They re-signed Vardy, for crying out loud. I mean, it's a problem, and it's going to be nice to see Winksy play, I guess, again. I always had a soft spot for Winks, but I think Leicester, if they were to finish 17th or higher, the manager should be getting a trophy just for that.
It's true. I mean, it feels like all we're doing is playing promoted teams. We finished last season with Burnley, Sheffield United. We've got Leicester to start this season. The best you can say for Leicester is that all they've really lost is their manager, right? Playing wise, the team that did well enough to get promoted last season is still there. Mm-hmm. It's the first game of the season. They're at home, but bearing in mind the manager is so different stylistically, you do have to think, is he going to try and change the way they play? Is he going to be a bit more pragmatic because he knows that he doesn't have the firepower to really outscore teams?
They lost Dewsbury Hall, their best player last season.
Okay, they did lose Dewsbury Hall to Chelsea. That's true. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
But it just, I don't know. I'm still a Spurs fan that's nervous. Right?
I don't say that we're going to win. Don't get my comments wrong. I don't say we're going to win.
No. But if you look at those, if you look at their preseason fixtures, I mean, they haven't scored since the middle of July, right? Yes, those are somewhat difficult games, but still, you'd expect to have seen a little bit more than just a victory at Shrewsbury. Maybe even just having 4 preseason games might leave them a bit undercooked. I don't know. I always feel that any kind of away game is a banana skin for Spurs, especially when the Spurs that we saw at the end of last season, which is pretty much still the same Spurs we have now, weren't great away from home.
Nope.
We won a couple. We won a few. We didn't win too many in that second half of the season away from home. So I don't expect an easy win. I think the quality we have should ensure it, but it's all about Spurs. As always, it's all about how we apply ourselves. If we can dominate things in midfield, because, under the lights at home, Leicester will be like Luton were last year. They'll have nothing to lose and they'll want to give it a go. So it's not a terrible opening game of the season, but it's one that if we don't get right, suddenly people will start thinking, hey, who is this new Spurs?
I'm nervous about it purely because I think Leicester, newly promoted, they'll raise the game. Now, I've got a lot of Leicester fans that I work with, a couple of good mates, and they're worried about Leicester this season. They are really worried. Lost the best player, changing manager, albeit I think Cooper's a good manager, actually. But zero investment pretty much in the playing squad. Maybe because they can't, maybe because they won't. Well, I saw they had a £17 million bid that they got gazumped on today. Yeah. So they've clearly got
I missed available.
That. Yeah, the guy from Leverkusen they were trying to get, but
yeah. Yes, I'm going to the game, Cameron. I'll try not to leave early before you get that in. I think that he's very worried. They're very worried about the season. And what they said was the game, Vardy's injured. I think Daka's injured. So they've got some untried kid up front. And their sort of thoughts were, well, we'll probably come at you for 15 minutes. And if you can weather that storm, the quality will absolutely, we'll win through because we're better than them in every aspect, really. I said, well, all you've really got to do is put a couple of corners under the crossbar and we're in trouble. And that's one my worry, because I see how we've defended set pieces pre-season, and I see very little change to last season. Albeit I caveat that with obviously Romero van der Ven were missing for a lot of those games, but still, it's a worry. I don't think Udogie's going to be fit either. So you potentially got who will play left back. That's a question. We'll come on to that in a minute. But let's just talk about it for a minute. They did boss the championship. They stuttered towards the finish line, but did just pip Ipswich to the championship. And it's a tough league. It is a tough league, so they've clearly got a bit about them. This was the most recent game. You will see Mr. Winks is still bossing the midfield with a rating of 3. And indeed, he's still in there, who is a good player. But there's a few of those faces that were in the side that got relegated. But obviously, not your Madisons, not your Harvey Barnes, etc., etc. And now Dewsbury Hall's gone as well. It's a pretty different Leicester side to the one that was in the Premier League. Spurs team news: we've suspended Bissouma. Let's just talk about the Bissouma bomb for 1 minute. I don't know how to summarise this other than complete idiot. Jack, is that a fair thing to say?
Yes, and it also reminds me of how lucky we all are to have not grown up with social media. And phones and cameras in every pocket around you. So yeah, it's one of these things that,
he sent the message himself.
Yeah, again, it was a private Snapchat that must have gotten captured and released. I don't think it was something he posted on X or Instagram, but it doesn't matter. He's engaging in activities that are questionable for a professional footballer. Certainly not all that questionable historically, given, what players have done and still been able to perform on the pitch, So for my feeling is that it's a deserved suspension. It's a deserved loss of trust. It's deserved for us to be wondering whether or not he really is part of this group going forward. He's not going to get sold this window, I think, unless somebody comes in with some unrealistic, really high bid. I can't imagine. So he's going to be part of the team. But certainly, last summer we were all talking about, the way Ange was seeing him as a leader of the young players.
United have just scored, by the way.
That's a shame. And so it's one of these things where you just question what he's thinking. I just, it's very disappointing to me. He was already kind of iffy in most people's minds of whether he deserved a starting spot. And now he's put himself in a situation where he's clearly, behind Bentancur. And if he doesn't get his act together, he could be behind a 19-year-old kid named Gray.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. When Spurs signed Bissouma, there was this kind of how have we got away with that?
Mm-hmm.
Right? How have we got him? He was good to go to any of the big 6 teams, really. And yet we kind of got him without anyone else ever really being interested. And we are starting to see maybe why nobody else was really interested, that maturity-wise, he was just never there to be a top professional. That doesn't mean he's a bad player. That doesn't mean he can't play football. He clearly can. But, it's tough to back him right now. When you're doing things that are that dumb, I mean, certainly Conte wasn't really hot on Bissouma. It does, and I'm no Conte fan, but if you're looking for professionalism, these managers, that's what they ask for. And so he started the season so well last year. He's been a big supporter of Ange. Ange has been a big supporter of him, and yet here we are. So it's I think Bissouma will have a huge role to play this season. I still do. I still think that Postecoglou wants him to be our 6, but something else like this, and he will be out the door very, very, very quickly.
Yeah. I mean, look, I just think that it is a frustration because and I said this on the pod the other night, we know he can do it. We've seen him do it. He is probably the only, maybe Bentancur, playing in a 6, which is his natural position. He can pick the ball up, turn, beat a man, and break the press. And that is invaluable to the way that Postecoglou plays, which is why Postecoglou put his eggs in a Bissouma-shaped basket, as far as I'm concerned. But we're just not seeing it. We saw it 10 games last season, so we know he can do it. But the disappointment is, things like this just leaves a very bitter taste in the mouth.
We don't need to hurt ourselves. I think that's what it is. I think Ange came out yesterday and said, or today, and said, everybody is in training, right? There are various levels of fitness, but everybody is training. Is either Fraser Forster, Richarlison's back. Everyone's training, and yet somehow we've got a player who's not available through his own stupidity, and you can't accept that. He can't do it again. It really is last chance saloon for him now.
Would you sell him? No, I think I'd put him in what HG's just said, last chance saloon, not least because you wouldn't sell him. I don't think anyone would go for him.
You wouldn't get much right now.
You wouldn't get much. So I think it's better to try and make a player for him. Yeah, it's just disappointing. You know he's got the ability. You know he can do it. He could be a top player. But, you know, he's choosing not to be right now. And he's not. He's got to demonstrate. He's got to show that he's going to make up for it on the pitch. That would be my... If I was Ange, you know, I'd pull him to one side. Let's say you've been really silly. And, you know, what you think is harmless is not harmless. It's harmful to the squad, the people you're around, and the trust I place in you. And you now need to deliver and pay it back on the pitch if I'm going to take this chance on you. And hopefully it will. I
think we've only got 2 games until the window ends, right? Because I think the third league game is after the window closes. So we've only got 2. He may not play in either of them.
Yeah.
Right? Because if we beat Leicester, which we do expect to, then he's probably on the bench at best for the Everton game. And maybe Ange will think, maybe we don't really need you around. Maybe, you know, I've just seen that Tyrese Hall scored 2 goals for the under-21s tonight. He's, in effect, Bissouma 2.0. I mean, there's so much similar in their game that you think Spurs could, you know, but no one's going to offer any money for him. That's the thing, right? We are kind of stuck with him, and we just hope that he figures it out. And I'm not sure he will. I'm not sure he will.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I tend to agree. Spurs start to the season, as we said earlier, it's a tricky one. Leicester versus Tottenham, obviously, coming up. Then we've got Everton at home. Now, you would think, for me, we could win those 2 games. Then comes the trip to Newcastle, and we know what happens at Newcastle. Then we've got those lot down the road. I'm afraid they're ahead of us at the moment. So that's going to be a very difficult game. And then Brentford, don't really know what's going to happen. But, you know,
I'll be honest, like the Brentford fans are not happy because they've not sold the player they know they need to sell, and they've not really bought anyone in either. Like, they came close to getting Archie Gray, and that's about it as far as Brentford are concerned. So, like, you would hope that we have enough to beat Brentford, as good as they can be. Like you would hope. 3 home games in your first 5, okay. Like, it's really it all depends on us. It really does all depend. Like, Everton were better than us at Spurs last season, but we beat them. But they were the better team.
Jack is, I've got to interrupt you, Jack, because HG, because Jack's he's got to take his leave here. He's got an urgent appointment. So, Jack, thanks for coming on and giving us your American insight.
Yeah, I'm sorry to have to leave early, but we've got it's still early here on the East Coast of America, so we've got plans with friends that I have to make. So I'm heading out for a dinner engagement. So I apologize to everyone, and hate to leave the show early, but I appreciate you having me on. And I would just say that I hope we have 5 points by the time we host Arsenal, and that would be great. As happy as I am with some of the signings, I don't expect us to. Last year's start is not going to happen. I think we're going to start quite slowly this year, which will be okay as long as it's not an absolute disaster. And if we can get a result with that lot down the road at home, that'll make the season start off a lot easier for us. That's for sure. So.
Okay, thanks,
All
Jack.
right, we'll see you guys. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, HG. These first 5, then. Call them. So you think we'll beat Leicester?
Yes, I think we'll beat Leicester.
Okay. Beat Everton at home.
It's so tough to say. It is tough to say. Like, I feel like that's the game that if Spurs play well, we'll win. But Everton are a decent side and they're getting better. And I don't know. Like,
And they've got short patch.
I don't think we'll lose. I don't think we'll lose against Everton. But do I think we'll win? No, I wouldn't put money on
that. Newcastle away.
Again, their first 11 is probably more established than ours. Their first 11 is very good at Newcastle. That will be a tough game. There's no doubt about it. Are we good enough to withstand it? I think we probably are. Are we good enough to go there and win? it's one of those games that really could go anyway. Like we could win 2-0, Newcastle could win 2-0, and it could be 2-2. Like there's goals in it, but I would probably have that down as a defeat if I'm honest.
Okay, Arsenal.
I'd take a draw. I would. I just like it's a decent time to play them because it's after the international break. Right, so then they haven't really been with each other too much. We haven't been with each other too much. It will be a kind of a puncher's game. I didn't see the game last season at home where they beat us 3-2, so I don't really know how that one went. But considering Arsenal are basically going for the title, they will go there to win that game, and they will try to win that game. They know that they can't afford to drop points anywhere. That might help us, but again, I'd take a draw.
Okay. Brentford.
I think we should win that. Like as good as Brentford
can be. Based on that form, I'll take it. I'll take it all the way.
I think
you're a pessimist, HG, but I disagree.
If we come out with 2 wins, 2 draws, and a defeat from those 5, I think I'd be happy. Considering where we are, considering how we weren't great at the end of last season, and I don't know if we've really improved. Then I think that's probably where we are. I think we're 5th, 6th, 7th in the league, and we might lose to the teams that are better than us, and we might struggle in certain games against mid-table teams. But I've seen nothing. I've seen nothing from Spurs so far this preseason to expect us to be any better than we were at the end of last season.
Pick your 11 for Leicester then, HG. Let's loop back round on Leicester predictions and starting 11. Who's going to start the game?
For Spurs?
Mm-hmm.
Good, because I don't know anything about Leicester. If it was me, I don't know, do you want mine or do you want what I think Ange is going to do?
What Ange is going to do.
All right. Then Ange will pick the back 5 we expect him to pick. So I think Udogie will start. I think it'll be Van der Ven and Romero.
Is he fit, though? I'm not sure Udogie's going to be fit.
I understand that, but I think he will start. I think we'd rather have him and use him for an hour than just keep him on the bench. So I think the back 5 kind of picks itself. I think the front 3 will be Son, probably. I think he will play Solanke, and I think on the right he will probably go with Kulusevski.
Well, Richarlison's not quite fit enough, I don't think.
No, so I think it's Son, Solanke, and Kulusevski up front, and in midfield I think he'll go Bentancur, Sarr, and Maddison.
Do you?
Yeah. Like he likes Sarr, he rates Sarr, he plays Sarr a lot, and I don't think he's going to change it. Doesn't mean I think that Sarr is probably part of my best 11, but I think.
Go on then. Give me your best 11. We've got time.
My 11.
See how different it is to Ange.
I would probably I have 11 players, but I don't really know which formation I would go with, and I know that Ange is very set on his 4-3-3. But I would like to see a situation where maybe Kulusevski plays in midfield instead of Maddison. That maybe Porro pushes more forward, and we have someone behind him. I would like to see Dragusin, Van der Ven, and Romero play, because I think that if you have Dragusin kind of in the middle of those 3, the other 2 can move forward with the ball, which is what they're good at. I don't really want our centre backs passing it to a defensive midfielder when our centre backs are good enough to do that man's job, right? They are good enough to pass the ball forward. So I would probably go with, let's say, a back 3, although Romero would probably be on the right, of more right-sided. So let's say if we stick to the 4-3-3, I'd have Udogie at left back, Van der Ven and Dragusin at centre back. Romero would be the nominal right back that goes into midfield, because I think he's done that before for Atlanta. I think he could do that for Spurs. You'd have Bentancur in the middle with Bergvall and Kulusevski ahead of him.
Bergvall?
And then you'd have Bergvall, yeah. I think Bergvall showed enough in pre-season that I think, like, mentally, he owns the pitch no matter who he's playing. That's how he plays the game. Do I think he's guaranteed to be better than Maddison? No. Do I think he will be? Yes. So I think Bergvall has shown enough in pre-season for me to say, okay, off you go, lads. See what we can do. I think that would mean that Porro ends up being right wing. There are certain games I wouldn't do it, but if it's Leicester, I want creative players higher up the pitch. We know he can cross the ball. We know he can shoot from distance. I don't need him in central midfield, frankly. I'm happy to have Romero do that job, just to win the ball high up the pitch and then pass it on to other players. And then I'd have Solanke and Son as the other two. That I feel that team could play three at the back if they needed, because then you'd have Udogie and Porro as wing backs. I think there's quite a bit of versatility in that 11. But I think that Ange will stick to his usual 4-3-3 and go from there. But based on pre-season, I think that's probably the 11 I would go with.
Well, I think Ange will play your usual back five. It'd be interesting if Udogie is injured, who picks up that space, because I'd be tempted to stick Van der Ven there and put Dragic in the middle of defence.
I mean, we saw at the end of last season, he was kind of reticent to do that. Yeah. And then it worked pretty well. Van der Ven was pretty good down that left-hand side. So like that might be a safer option. Like if we don't need to go with Udogie, then we just do that, and that could still work. But I want, like, the only way Udogie's really going to get games is by playing for the first team. There are no friendlies, there are no behind closed doors that we know of, and he's still the best left-sided defender, probably, certainly to play
in the country
that we have. Yeah, in the country.
Yeah. Lives in a house, a very big house. I would have in midfield. Show my age there. Maddison, because it's Leicester away. You can't not put Maddison up against his old team. I think he'd be bang up for it. Bentancur is the 6. Is what I think Ange will do, because it just makes sense. I think you're right. He'll probably pick Papa Matasar in midfield. Bissouma would have been I think it would have been Bentancur further forward and Bissouma if he hadn't gone and done drugs. Don't do drugs, kids. And then left wing is obviously going to be Sonny, Solanke, and I don't think he'll play Kudu. I think he'll have Kudu on the bench, and I think he'll play your mate Brennan.
Even after the pre-season that Kudu's had, because he was pretty good playing for Spurs where he was playing.
No, he has been, but he's been playing through the middle and up top, hasn't he? And that's where I would choose to deploy him, if I'm being really honest, because I think he's too slow for what Ange wants to do, and he doesn't get around the back. He cuts inside all the time. And for me, Ange's system is missing the wingers getting down the flank and beating the man and pulling the ball back rather than cutting inside every single time. And even Sonny, who, he's 2-footed, but he doesn't go to the byline very often. Right. He likes to cut in and have a shot, doesn't he? That's his trademark signature thing. It frustrates me because I think Ange ball, if you want to term it as that, you really want to keep it to his principles. You've got to have flying wingers who can beat a man.
Yeah.
And make chances in the sort of 8 yards in front of the goal.
But if Leicester drop deep, which they probably will, there is no space for Johnson to make those runs. And sadly, I don't think Johnson is intelligent enough to beat an offside trap. He needs someone else to play the ball around the back. And Leicester might be like, great, we've got our back 4. We've got 3 kind of defensive midfielders sat in front. There are no gaps for you to play those balls. So, like, I get it. Like, I know what you mean. Like, for Ange ball to really be successful, then, we need pace down the wings. We need players who can beat a man.
Which is why we keep signing speedsters, basically.
Yeah. But I wouldn't, because if it's like Newcastle away, there's a chance Johnson would be there just to keep the Newcastle's back 4 honest. That if we wanted to play the ball over the top, we've got someone who can do that. Even the goal, was it the Vissel Kobe game? We kind of just launched the ball over the top and Johnson ran onto it and crossed it and Son scored. That was a super simple goal, but what it was a ball over the top. That's where Johnson's skill set comes in handy, and I don't know if we're going to have balls over the top against Leicester. I don't see that being. I don't want to see Spurs having to play that game. Do you know what I mean? Like, we're not going to play possum against these teams and encourage them onto us just so we can lift the ball over and hope that Johnson has the desire to beat his man. We do want to be. I think
it's make or break for him this season, though. It's make or break. It's make or break for Johnson this season, and I know you don't like him, and I get that. And I'm not particularly over and enamored with him, if I'm being really honest. But I do want him to succeed. you would like to think that Ange would be in his ear, directing him with exactly what he wants him to do.
Yeah,
and he's going to take that on board, and he's going to mature as a player, and he's going to do that.
He has to offer more, right? Whether it's defensively, whether it's just a willingness to take his man on, he has to offer more. Like, I don't think that's there. I don't think it's really in him, and that's sad because I want it to be there. Like,
he's got the tools to do it, though, hasn't he? He's got good ball control. He's fast.
It's an attitude thing. It's an attitude.
I don't think it's attitude. I think it's confidence.
Yeah, but if you need confidence to try it, then okay, then it's a confidence thing. But the attitude is, I want to try it. That's you know what I mean. That's where it comes from.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's kind of the same coin, just with different viewpoints. I just if I'm a left back playing against Johnson, then I just stay up his backside because he's going to lay it off to Porro every time, right? He's not going to try and get around you. If he does it once, he'll leave you for dust, right? But I think he's all about kind of playing the safe option, keeping the ball, and I think that's great. I think there are obviously occasions to do that, but you have to be able to worry the defender, and I just don't think a competent fullback would be worried by Brennan Johnson. I don't.
Well, that's one for you, HG. The bench. Now, we talked last season many times, as we have done about Spurs many times, about the lack of options from the bench. We shouldn't have that problem this year, because a lot of the players we've signed, you would expect to be trying to make a name for themselves off the bench. Your Bergvalls, your Greys, your Mikey Moores.
Certainly now that everyone's fit, our bench is going to look super strong, and there'll be a couple of players, that are decent Premier League players that won't make it, right? I mean, that should be the case. That will be the case if we stay away from injuries. But yeah, I think it's all about how
Odobert as well. How many subs can you name? Is it like 7 or 8 or something?
You can name 9 subs for the Premier League.
That's a lot.
Yeah, name 9, use 5. It's there's a lot. Again, I've said this before on various shows. A good manager will look at those subs and actually plan to use them in a certain way.
All right, who's your bench then? Who's your bench, HG? Who's on your bench?
Okay, well, sub goalkeeper doesn't really matter because Vicario is probably not coming off. Okay, I think if you're looking for sub defenders, if Dragusin doesn't start, he's on the bench. If Archie Gray doesn't start, he's on the bench. Just for the versatility.
That's 2.
I think that if it's either Spence or Davies for the third defensive player, I would probably go with Davies just because of the left foot. There's nothing against Spence, but I would. In midfield, if Sarr isn't starting, then he's on the bench.
He is though, isn't he? In this.
Well, yeah, if you go with Ange's 11, then Bergvall is on the bench. Yeah. Right. In theory, he could name Lo Celso, but he probably won't. But that would be another midfielder there. And then he might just go, you know what? I'll have Moore, Werner, Odobert, Richarlison. All of those could be on the bench, right?
Yeah. What about? I mean, when you say all those names and you look at the potential to change the game, there is actually potential to change the game. Whereas previously we filled it up with unknowns and people that are not very good.
I mean, and even he's still at the club, so someone like Solomon could be there. Someone like Skip could be there.
Solomon was still here, full stop.
Yeah, there's a bunch of players that we tend to forget about. I'm sitting here thinking of midfielders, but obviously Bissouma would be either on the bench or starting if he was available. So that's another one. So we've got names, but if Ange has been that person where when Plan A doesn't work, I bring on someone else to make Plan A work better, then I'm not sure we do have a huge amount of depth. We don't have much difference to what we want to do. But I think we're in a much better position to rotate, to look at games and say, you know what? We've got an away game against a pot 4 side in the Europa League. We don't need to start all of the big guns in that game. They can have a rest. Yeah. Maybe we might want to because, Spurs have, banana skins and all that. But the better teams, the better clubs, they do that, right?
And you've got rotation for the striker now, haven't we? Because you've got a choice, haven't you? Richie or Solanke. And then you've behind that, I guess, Lancashire's in the mix, isn't he? Maybe. And you've got Son who can play there.
We definitely have lots of players who can do lots of things. And if Ange's system stays the same, then we kind of know that, all right, Archie Gray could be right back. He could be centre back, frankly, in some of the games. I believe that. I think Archie Gray likes to have the pitch in front of him, doesn't want to do half-turn stuff. Can, but actually prefers to just play the ball in front of him, look for the runners, and use his passing ability. We do have a lot of options, but it's about finding, again, I talk about this all the time, finding players that work well together. Like, I think Bergvall is smart enough that he can work with anyone. I think he's probably going to be the star of our season.
He looks good, doesn't he? He looks very good. I said to a couple of guys at work, what's that name? You'll have never heard of him, because, to be fair, only Spurs fans have. But come the end of the season, you'll know who he is. And I genuinely believe my words, because I think he's looked that good in pre-season, that I think he is going to be an absolute player for us. I really do.
He just reminds me of Delhi. He reminds me of Delhi. He's
coming to...
But just when Delhi came onto the scene in 2015, I think it was.
No fear.
No fear. The pre-season, we went to flipping, Munich and played the LD Cup, and he was nutmegging Luka Modric, right? I feel as if Bergvall plays with that style of like, I'm going to do like, and he's made a fair few mistakes in pre-season, and he's been caught a few times. But it's just this belief that I'm going to play the way I can against whoever it is, and I think that as he gets older, those decisions are just going to get better and better. And whereas it took Delhi maybe 2 or 3 games in that season before he was a starter, I suspect Bergvall may go on a similar path where he comes on, he plays well, he changes things. We'll play a cup game or we'll play a Europa game, and he'll start the game and he'll boss it. And Spurs will be like, no, he needs to play. I genuinely see that coming. So I hope it does, because it means that we've done something right. But he's one where I feel like he's less worried about the system and more interested in making sure that Spurs play a good game and that we win the game. I don't know. It's tough to be so hopeful about a kid who's not played out of Sweden before, but he looks like he has that aura where it's like I run this game.
I agree. He's got an aura of class about him, just like you, HG. Which brings us to the end of the show. HG, welcome back to Austria. It's lovely to have you back. I hope you get over your jet lag in time for Monday's game, and I'm sure it'll be a great fixture for Spurs. What is your prediction?
Well, it's my birthday on Sunday, so it's my birthday game. They better not lose. My prediction is that we will win 2-0, kind of like the Forest game last season. We do enough to win, but we don't look too convincing, but the quality will shine through. Probably, I'm assuming that Man United won. I suspect it will be kind of like that. Like the opponent have a good game, but at the end, the better team win.
I'm going to say that we are going to do 3-0. Comfortable win. And I fancy Solanke to get a couple. I think he's going to be big for us this season. I'm warming to the signing. I was a little bit underwhelmed, like most people. I think it's fair to say at first, but the more I think about it, the more he fits, and I fancy him to bag a couple of goals. And just because Kulu's got that pre-season form behind him, he's going to get the third. HG, thanks very much for joining me this evening. You can catch up with all the action over on our Twitter page, Lads It's Tottenham. Please do follow it if you're not already. I do like the acronym LIT. It works well. And until next time, get behind the team. We're going to win. We're going to smash Leicester to bits. If I have to hear who came third in a 2-horse race and Champions of England, you'll never sing that. 14 times, it'll be worth it if we smash them. So in the meantime, come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.